There are certain franchises that are forgotten over the years, but there are some that live in the hearts of the fans forever. One such example is Guyver. The origin story and the fate of the Guyver franchise are so chaotic. It's such a loss that not many people talk about classics like Guyver. But you know what? Some classics don't need mainstream hype to matter. And I know you're probably curious to know how a niche, violent manga series ended up as a US-Japan live-action co-production in 1991 and built a solid fandom for itself. So, let me tell you the full story. It all started back in 1985 when Yoshiki Takaya, a Japanese manga artist, wrote and illustrated the manga Bio Booster Armor Guyver, also called Kyoshoku Soku Gaiba in Japanese. It was published by Kotuma Shoten in their monthly Shonen Captain magazine in the February 1985 issue, but the magazine was discontinued in 1997. So Kadokawa Shoten took over the publishing duties and re-released all the episodes in his monthly Shonen Ace magazine. Today, we've gathered here to talk about the American live-action films, but this manga has gone through multiple other OVA adaptations. The first anime film adaptation was in 1986, which was based on the first volume. The next adaptation was a 12-episode anime series based on the first 4 volumes. After that came the 2 American live-action films, one in 1991 called The Guyver, and the other in 1994 called Guyver 2 Dark Hero. Another 26-episode anime series based on the first 10 volumes was released in 2005. But the main question lies, why was there a sudden Hollywoodization of a Japanese manga? It's because Japan wanted to expand the franchise internationally, and the Americans were also interested in exploiting the special effects monsters and superhero genre that grew very popular in the late 80s and early 90s in the US. So the American producers, Sochiku Films and Bandai, the manga's right holder, joined hands to adapt a live-action film based on Takaya's manga. But to be honest, back then Hollywood was trying to experiment with these films. People loved Power Rangers, so they wanted to test out more film adaptations like Guyver. And so the budget was not something out of the ordinary, especially for a niche manga. The film was shot in the span of 5 weeks with a budget of only about $3 million. So during the release, they pulled quite a marketing stunt by featuring Mark Hamill heavily on the cover art and placing him next to the Guyver armor to use his star power and credibility. Naturally, people thought he was the main lead, but he actually played the role of Max Reed, the CIA agent who was working alongside the main protagonist. Moreover, to sell the movie to a broader audience, they made the movie PG-13, even though the original manga was dark and violent. Their aim wasn't just to attract the hardcore anime fans, but a more diverse audience. But to do that, they'd compromise on the quality and true essence of the manga. The film felt like it drifted away from its main objective. The real dark fear and body horror wasn't present at all. Rather, it was a more lighthearted and goofy, action-packed film. And so the end result was a mad sci-fi monster action film. Naturally, the reviews were also mixed. Most of the viewers stated the movie was a mature version of Power Rangers. Somewhere the criticism helped the creators understand the issue and what the viewers wanted, so they worked on the next film more serious. However, the budgeting issue still prevailed in the next film as well. Once, Screaming Mad George said, due to the budget and the schedule, it was a more practical choice to make a PG-13 film than an adult body horror thriller like the manga. In the first film, they explored the story of a young man called Sean Barker, played by Jack Armstrong, who found an alien artifact that bonded with him to form a biomechanical cyborg suit that you basically call the Guyver. He was on a mission to save his girlfriend from the Kronos Corporation, which was an organization of human mutants called Zoonoids, and they could transform themselves into monsters. This was the basic storyline of the film, and Brian Yuzna produced it. For this film, special effects were a very crucial part, because they had to put high-quality makeup and design full bodysuits for those complex, grotesque, biologically mutant creatures and monsters. Moreover, the film was packed with intense action-packed scenes and martial arts. The monsters had to fight in heavy rubber suits, so to pull it off, they needed the suits to be durable and flexible. To make it possible without any cheap CGI, the direction duties were handed to 2 very prominent special effects artists, namely Screaming Mad George and Steve Wang, who were well known for their work on A Nightmare on Elm Street 4 and Predator before beforehand. They were the co-directors in the first film, but the 1994 Guyver Dark Hero was solely directed by Steve Wang because of budget issues. Gladly, the sequel was far better than the first film in almost every aspect. This time the budget was only $800,000, which was much lower than the first film. Yet this film worked because Wang directed the film with an R rating in mind. We also got a new Sean Barker in the film. This time, David Hayter played the part. Wang captured the gruesome violence that matched the manga and brought in Hong Kong-style stunt performers, which made the fight choreography look so much better. Even the suit and makeup looked amazing in the sequel. Most importantly, the storyline and tone of the film was dark and psychological, like it was meant to be to capture Guyver. And the audiences who understood that appreciated the filmmakers for their effort. The film might have failed to perform very well commercially, but it became a cult classic along the way. I feel just like the fans. Our main protagonist, David Hayter, got attached to this role as well. Even when the filming and the premiere was over, he just couldn't let go of this franchise. So he took the initiative and made a pitch for a third Guyver movie and took it to director Steve Wang. But Wang wasn't really interested because commercially, both films didn't work well. Additionally, both had faced budget issues. Except for the hardcore fans, the audience in general didn't really demand or show interest in a sequel. So Wang's lack of initiative was understandable and practical. But then, a very unexpected thing happened. An MGM executive who was a dedicated fan of Guyver approached both Wang and Hayter to initiate a strong story plan for the sequel. The basic gist of the sequel was based on how an old Guyver passed his biobooster unit to a new host. It was like a torch-passing story where they could honor what came before and move on to a new and fresh story. They even discussed the budget, which had been a great issue in the past films. Given all the progress, a sequel sounded really promising, but then we never got a sequel because they faced a lot of issues with the distribution of the film rights. There were multiple parties that were involved in the films, and it was a real task to solve all the legal and financial issues. It was such a mess that they had to rethink whether a sequel was worth all the work. The math wasn't mathing when the studios calculated how much money would go in to resolve the legal issues before starting the film, the gross profit from the earlier films. There was no guarantee a sequel would work well, so before things could move further, it got shut down again. The fans who were elated at the news of a sequel were definitely not happy with the outcome, but given the situation, the fans just had to accept it. Also, if we take the storyline they chose to make the new sequel for, it would have faced a lot of competition. Because if you remember, I mentioned earlier that apart from the live-action movies, there were multiple other OVA anime adaptations taking place at the same time, which were based on the manga volumes. There were even novels made on the Guyver. So many options already existed for the fans to choose from, but the main issue was that the IP drifted into limbo. To begin with, the original manga that was released in 1985 faced too much instability. It constantly bounced from one magazine to another over the course of 30 years. First Shonen Captain, then Monthly Ace, then Shonen Ace, and at last Young Ace. Now it was brutal for the fans who had to wait for every update because they were so inconsistent. It would repeatedly go on hiatus, and sometimes it was due to Takaya's health conditions. Even though the manga started in 1985, only 200 chapters of it were actually produced. It might sound like a lot, but if you compare it to other anime, it falls short. Take Dragon Ball Z for example. It actually ran weekly for 10 years and actually finished, but Guyver ran for 3 decades and still didn't complete. When the 2005-2006 series came, it truly gave fans the hope that the franchise had finally locked in. It got the best reviews and was even well received by the fans. But again, the franchise stopped production again. So, what the fans got in return was a huge cliffhanger. I feel the franchise pulled this move because it couldn't compete with other anime. Back then, more kid-friendly anime like Naruto, One Piece, and Dragon Ball Z were also getting broadcast. Apart from their amazing storyline and characters, they served a larger audience. But for the Guyver fans, it was such a disappointment. In the Max Factory anniversary, when fans asked whether they were ever getting a second TV series, they didn't even try to sugarcoat the truth. They straight up said no and gave zero hope. For the anime adaptations, it was the end of the story. However, for the manga, it still continued until 2016. Don't think we actually got proper closure or an ending for the manga version. It just abruptly stopped in June of 2016. The fans sadly complained in forums that Guyver's completely dead. They got no new manga chapters, 2 horribly made films, and a 2005 anime adaptation which didn't even get a second season. And it was the harsh truth. Some even complained the franchise basically gave up on the series. Despite all the frustrations and disappointments, the cult never really left. They kept the movies alive through DVDs, fan forums, and HD restorations. Of course, that's what you do when your favorite manga gives you no closure. The Japan Legend forum is still active. Even now, you'll still find fans wishing someone would make make a live-action film with a good budget and give justice to the manga. There are hopeful fans like me who are still waiting for a comeback to this day. And I don't know whether there will be a comeback for sure, but something did happen earlier this year that can bring back the hopes of some fans. Steve Wang posted on his Instagram saying that a 4K remaster of Guyver Dark Hero is coming in 2026 with a ton of extras. Well, it isn't something huge. It's not like we got guaranteed a sequel announcement, but it was more than enough for the fans who waited for years with no updates. At least they'll be able to see a polished and preserved sequel with a lot of bonuses. After staying dormant for years, the fan forums got revived again. Even the outlets like Joblo and Bounding Into Comics ran to cover the topics. Now, a new generation of fans will be able to watch Sean Barker suit up in a bio armor, and that also in the best quality. The 4K version will be a treat to the old fans for sure, because at least Guyver Dark Hero was not forgotten or given up by its people. For all those years, the fans have kept the anime and the movies alive. But apart from that, they even made fan projects. One of them is called Guyver Genesis. They even launched it on Kickstarter, which is a live-action fan adaptation of the original manga Kickstarter. It's entirely driven by people who actually love and care for this IP. It really shows how devoted the fan circle is and how connected they are to Guyver. On the internet, the speculation hasn't stopped either. Even to this day, whenever Wang or Hader appears in an interview, they're asked the same question. That is, whether they could still make the film, whether the right distributions were sorted, what would it take to make a sequel? However, the answers are always the same, that it's complicated, the process is expensive, and there's no certainty. But people keep asking anyway, which tells you everything you need to know about where the fandom stands. But here's my honest take. The reasons Guyver 3 never happened still persist, and there's serious issues which can't be fixed that easily. It costs time and money that the franchise or the studios feel is a major risk factor. You can't blame them if they take a step back here and give a 4K version of the film to make the fans feel content. It's like a temporary relief or comfort for the fans, but in the long run, I don't think the fans will ever stop needing a sequel or some closure. But at least the new version does prove that the franchise has not been abandoned. There are people like Wang who are proud of what they made and wanted to survive. And to be honest, in a media landscape where IPs get rebooted constantly, you never really know what's dead and what's just dormant. Finally, Guyver Dark Hero is getting the 4K treatment it always deserves. So, it means after almost a decade of silence from the franchise, the cult will be revived again. And let's just hope, in the future, Guyver will get the closure it needs. So that's it for today. I hope you guys have thoroughly enjoyed this video. Before leaving, please don't forget to press the like, subscribe buttons, and then ring that bell icon. Until then, bye-bye, and we'll see you in the next one. And don't you forget to stay marvelous.